G'day, I'm Todd. This is Toxic Garage Customs, and today I'm doing a bit more on Toxic in the background there. Ever since I built this old girl, I haven't really been happy with the pedal setup. So just got to switch the camera around here. So what I've got here is a pedal and brake and throttle pedal, I should say, out of a WH Statesman. Originally, when I built this car, it had an LS motor in it and a whole combination, and long story which I won't bore you with, it hasn't got an LS in it now. But that's not relevant. These pedals, they sit too far to the right hand side for my liking, or just in general for the driving position. So you sit twisted in the seat. It's always been the case, always known it, always intended to fix it. Well, today I'm going to start that. It's pretty simple. What I need to do, I reckon I need to move the whole shebang across about 75 mil. Let's call that a number, 3 inches. So I'm not moving anything. What I'm going to do is cut that step out of the brake, out of the accelerator pedal. So move the accelerator pedal so that it becomes a straight line off this bar, straight down here. So it just moves the whole thing across that distance there. So it might not be quite 3 inches, but whatever that is. And then I'm going to, and I'll remove the pedals to do this, then I'm going to heat the brake pedal up here somewhere, bend it across and make sure that the pedal remains horizontal. Probably take me a couple of hours, but it'll save me back pain. So let's go. So obviously the first thing I need to do is pull stuff apart. So I've got some tools here. My philosophy in life is do everything as easily as you possibly can. So hence why I'm using a cordless ratchet. I do have another ratchet over there just in case the cordless one doesn't fit. Do it as easily as possible, but do it correctly. That's my logic. You don't have to cut corners, just cut time. So I'm going to pull this apart. I've got a mixture of nuts and bolts and things, all different sizes up there. And my throttle cable, I just got cable tied on just so it doesn't pop off. I've never painted this up, so while this is off, once I've fixed it, I'll give it all the paint and everything as well. So I'm not going to bore you by watching me pull this apart. So when you see me next, it'll be pulled apart. Okay, literally about 30 seconds later, I got this apart. So that's the pedal. I might clean all this up now that I've tested and tried it for a while. The cable just slips in the side here, comes through from the firewall, lock nut off and so on. It's made out of bits that were hanging around. That piece there actually on the back was actually a piece of the old radiator support, I think. Yeah, so as I said, I'm going to paint it up. Now that I'm happy with the way it all works, I'll actually weld that piece in place and just make it look a little prettier, different hardware and so on. But more importantly, I'll change this part. Let's get into it. It was my intention to cut this, as I said, cut it here, move this part across, and I was going to get a piece of tube and a bit of round hollow pipe and sleeve it over the top. Since I can't find any, what I'm going to do, I've got this 10mm round stock. I always find it handy to have bits of stuff like this hanging around. If I haven't shown you previously, which I haven't shown you previously, I've got this whole trolley full of offcuts and pieces and so on, and it's amazing what you can make out of what's lying around. I do buy new stuff in longer lengths when I need it, but I don't throw all the little parts out. So back to this. What I intend to do is, move my finger out of the way. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to weld this onto the back of here and just continue the original pedal line down. So that'll just come down like that. And then I'll weld this part on to the front of it, and then I'll fill the joint. It's just reinforcing it, stop it bending and so on. I did consider the fact that this is just a piece of round bar flattened off on the end here. It's got this sort of flange where the cable comes through, a bit of a turn, and then it's just flattened out on the end here for the pedal and so on. I did consider, since I've got the bar, just making a whole new piece. But I'm not into making life hard for myself. it works perfectly fine. It'll be the back of the pedal with an extra piece of rod on there. It'll make it stronger. Then I don't have to go to the trouble of trying to refabricate those ends and so on. Won't make a relatively simple job hard. So let's start cutting. So in an effort not to go destroying parts that I want to keep, like these bushes, I've just slipped the pedal assembly out. You would think it was easy. It was a little harder than what it should be, but anyway, I got it out. Only minutes. So yeah, so I'll set this part aside so I don't go destroying it. And I've got this. I've just quickly cleaned up the metal. So I've just got this piece. Just cleaned it up so I can weld it on. I've got to weld this on first. I'll cut it about there somewhere. And then I'll cut the upper piece off. And that way, hopefully I can get all my alignment right. Just a note, I first started filming and photographing everything that I did so I could remember how things went together. So when I take this spring off, if I can't remember how it goes, I can just look back at this. I've just got that first piece tacked in place. I'm not the first person to say this, but tack things in place before finally welding them. It's much easier to cut something apart if it's wrong, if you've only put a few tacks on it, than it is to undo everything if you've completely welded it. But I'll go through and I'll fillet weld between the two pieces there. Same over here and on the end eventually. But now what I'll do, as I said, I'll just cut off the piece that I don't want. I'm going to transfer this point directly across so the pedal is exactly the same length that it was, because the pedal position was good, and we'll go from there. Just to explain that a bit better, the pedal position is not good. Pedal position is too close to the kick panel, but the length of it was good. So all I'm doing, I'm just transferring the height that I'm going to cut it to the height where it's going to come across over there, and then I'll know the correct lengths. Cut the end of the pedal off. This is it here. I put a reference line on the top just so I could see where the top is there and where the top was there, so that when I transfer it across, if I line those blue lines up, then the pedal will still be facing in the same direction that it was before I cut it off, so that it's not clocked the wrong way around. So that's going to go, we'll go on the other side actually, that's going to go over there. So I'll tack that in place, probably cut the end of this rod off here, it's a little bit long, but then it should be in the same position that it was, but moved across that distance there. So here's a good example of why to just tack it in place. So firstly, I've just put that there. You can see where I've got it tacked. Haven't finished it off. I've literally only got one tack on this bottom part. And the reason being is I want to check it. Now while I've clocked it, so I got it orientated exactly as it was and so on, when I've moved it across, I'm actually not happy with the position of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut that tack off, and I'm actually going to rotate the pedal slightly that way, so slightly to the right, but also just here, I'm actually going to bend the bar up a bit to give me a little bit more clearance between down to the carpet, because I think that there's a possibility it'll interfere with full throttle, and let's face it, no one wants that. So I'm going to cut this apart, do a little bend and tack it back together and see if I'm happy with it. So I cut and welded, as I said I was going to, change the angle a little bit. I'm much happier with it. I didn't film any of that, you'll see the end result. But I've also cut off the spare piece that was sticking out the side of the original pedal. I've got this sort of welded together somewhat, so I've started dressing this side up, just sort of cut it back to clean it up a bit, and I'll finish this end off as well. But I'm going to put a little piece of rod in that gap, and I'll finish welding this side. So ultimately it'll just look thicker, but it should all flow quite well. So I'm just going to cut a little piece of rod for that gap. So this is it here. So I literally am just going to, or have just set it where it needs to be, marked it. I'll cut that, give it a clean up on the edges of where that's being welded on. I've just sort of tapered around the edge a little bit so that when I put some weld in there and grind it off, there won't be a crack there. It'll actually have some penetration and it'll just look pretty. It's got to be 4 times stronger than it was before, so I'm not worried about that, but I want it to look okay. Let's get into it. So put that piece in there. I've done some welding and filling. I've just ground it back on this side. There's still a few pieces here that I want to fill and blend in. The other side is a little further advanced. So yeah, and so there, it's got some shape to it. Again, the only part you ever got to see is that and maybe the side of it. But when I'm crawling underneath the dash looking for something, then at least I'll look and see what a nice accelerator pedal I've got there. That's about as cleaned up as it's going to be. Happy with that. It's got a good shape. Should have heaps of strength. Not that that'll be an issue. Also, just taking the time to put this together. So, as mentioned before, this was all just put together to test. It's been about a year. I'm pretty sure it's tested. So, I'm just going to weld this together. This bracket here, just onto the back of this. It's just to stop the pedal flexing into the floor. And this little hole is where the throttle cable comes through. So I'm just going to weld it together, just make it a bit stronger, and then I'll put it back together, test fit it, and if I'm happy with it, then I'll throw some paint on it, and we'll move across to the brake pedal. Clean this stuff up. I've just marked the pedal up, so it's ready to go. The bracketry I've given a clean up. I haven't gone crazy on it. This is a pedal after all. Let's be honest about it. So that's the back of it, the front. Just giving it a clean up. Wiped it over with wax and grease remover. Gonna give it a coat of etch prime for bare metal, and then just some. That's all I've got at the moment. Roll bar and chassis satin flat black paint. It's not what I'd normally use, but it's there. It's a pedal after all. So yeah, gotta give it a prep, give it some etch prime, let that dry for a little bit, and I'll put some coats on it, and we can put it back together. And I can have some lunch. I let the, what was it? Etch primer set for about 24 seconds, and then I scuffed it over with some green Scotch-Brite. And then I've painted it with this chassis roll bar paint, which is thick like syrup. And when you actually read the instructions, it says you don't need to prime. I don't like that. I like priming, so it's good. The edge prime that I used actually was dry, super fast drying, so that's good. So this is pretty disgusting looking paint, but they're pedals. So gotta let that dry, and I'll chuck all this back in. Then I'll have a look at the brake pedal. Halfway there. Paint's somewhat dry. Got it assembled. You can see, nice straight pedal shaft there. Everything looks good with a coat of paint. I'm happy with the way it's come up. Should do the job. Move on to the brake pedal. Well, my battery went flat earlier, so it's now dusk. But I'm going to show you how the pedals have come up. I did the brake pedal, installed the throttle, and that's it. So I straightened the brake pedal out, had to twist the end of it to get it right, and I got the throttle pedal all sorted. I'm really happy with the way it's come up. I've already taken it for a drive, and I'm not sitting twisted like a spiral noodle now, so that's a good thing. I'm happy about that. And while I was working away, some window winders that I ordered arrived, so that's pretty cool. So I'll put those on as well. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. I want to thank you for watching. This is only a brand new YouTube channel, so it'll take me a little while to get some content up and to learn basically how to do it and what people want to see. So stick with me and I'm going to stick at it. I've got plenty of cars, I've got plenty of content. It just depends what people want to see, whether people like the types of things that I do or whether they want particular content. So you tell me and I'll see what I can do. I won't make any promises, but I'm absolutely happy to try and put content there that people want to see. To me, this is about sharing my passion, but also if people can learn something from what I'm doing, then that's great. That's really what it's about for me. So again, thanks again. I'm Todd. This is Toxic Garage Customs. Have a good evening.